My last video, I talked about truth and what truths are and how there are truths in the world, because a lot of people say there is no truth, and that is just an untruth. So let me just give you an example of a truth. One that most people will not argue with. However, there might be a few people out there that view things differently. And one of them is you reap what you sow. There are rules, there are laws, and it doesn't matter what your intentions are or how good or bad or how small you feel you are, you can't, or how great you think you are, you can't beat the rules. You can't do that. At least not in this dimension. And the rules are you reap what you sow. If you plant carrots, you get carrots. You plant strawberries, you get strawberries. And you don't get mad when you plant carrots and you don't get strawberries. You don't get to, get angry. And so kind of like what your life looks like now is definitely the things you've been planning in your mind and you've been doing. So you're reaping what you've sown. Now, there are victims out there, don't get me wrong. But the people that have made victims, found a person who was vulnerable and made a victim out of them, will reap what they sow. There's no getting around that. So this is why knowledge is so important. Knowledge of the truths, knowledge of the laws, knowledge of the universal laws, some call them. I call them God's laws. Jesus called them, God's laws, or whatever you want to call them. The point is you can't get around them. Okay, you have to go through them, then you have to pay consequences. So when I think about knowledge and why people need knowledge, it helps them avoid mistakes that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to avoid if they didn't have this information. So that's my journey. My journey is to get that knowledge out there. The knowledge is you reap what you sow. And does that mean because I have knowledge, I applied it? That would have been wisdom. And I didn't always apply wisdom. And a lot of people did, though. And a lot of people like me didn't. And you can see their consequences. You could actually look in the Bible, which is one of the things I like about the Bible. It doesn't just tell all the goody two-shoes stories about the kings and other people in the Bible. It tells the dirty stuff too, the bad stuff, the ugly stuff, and it tells the consequences. And it doesn't condone the wrong. So an example is David and Bathsheba. Again, he killed a man to have an affair with his wife, so she wouldn't be killed because she was pregnant with his baby. He wasn't going to kill him until Bathsheba turned up pregnant and couldn't get her husband to claim the baby because he wouldn't lay down with her. So it was a real conspiracy going on here. And it wasn't okay. And they faced consequences. Because a lot of people think God let David off on that because it was David. No, he didn't. His consequences were consequences. He reaped what he sowed. And so did Bathsheba. And there was always trouble in David's household. And there was always trouble with that lineage and that kingship. But it was the one that was to be preserved. So it was. The point is you reap what you sow. That is the first law. And if people can see, okay, how did adultery and murder turn out for a king? How did it turn out for him? Yucky. How much more yucky will it turn out for me? So if you know those things, instead of in your mind committing adultery on your wife, you'll think, it has consequences. I'm not even going to look at her or him. It has consequences that don't go away. There's no magic pill for consequences except alcohol. It gives you more consequences. But I'm just thinking of why this knowledge is so important. If you can avoid a horrible decision and make a wiser decision based on knowledge, you've helped a person so much more than just saying don't do it or not telling them at all. Here's another example that I really feel strongly about is AIDS. It's all good was the philosophy in the 80s for many people, but that's never been God's philosophy. It's always been you reap what you sow. Having sex with multiple partners was never on the table for God's people. You get a wife, a husband, and you're done. Anyone who did more faced consequences. It didn't work out well. He didn't punish some of them for that. I mean, he didn't punish them. It was consequences. He allowed the consequences to show what happens when you do these things. And he did warn young men against prostitutes, because you're going to get a disease. So the point is, even in our day and age with condoms and birth control, there are still consequences for loose conduct. And when I say loose conduct, it doesn't have to be intercourse. Loose conduct is loose conduct. There are consequences for it. So, truths. If you save a person from getting AIDS because you told them the truth about sex is a sacred thing between a man and his wife and a wife and her husband, that's a truth. And now, not only have you saved them from the consequences if they apply that truth, and save them from the AIDS. So being a nurse is great. You save people's lives every day. Being a doctor is great. You save people's lives every day. But being a knowledge distributor, distributing knowledge and helping people make better choices through wisdom, that is preventive medicine. And that will give you a long, healthy, clean life. And a happier life, too. They're finding out. People that stay together for 50 years, 40 years, you think, oh, God, they must be so bored. Sex must be going really bad by then. Actually, everything gets better because they realize, oh, this guy's not going anywhere. This woman's not going anywhere. I've seen, I gotta go.